Hey everyone and welcome back. So, it is almost stuff buying season and we thought that it's pretty much high time for us to do a buyer's guide, taking you through all that you need to know about this year's gaming options, where there really is more than ever, and with AMD's surprise announcements, there's more competition than ever as well, and that is exciting. Speaking of exciting things, if you want to be along for that ride, then hey, hit that sub button and that like button. Most of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. You can help fix that problem. Okay, with that said, let's go. We'll kick it off with the obvious, the new console. So Microsoft have got their Xbox Series X and Series S, and then Sony have got their PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Digital Edition. Basically here, the Xbox Series X is the big boy. It's got a disk drive and it's got larger internal storage. Technically, I think it's 1 gigabyte on the machine, but 800 of that is actually accessible by the end user for doing things like storing games. Now, to get around that problem, there is external storage options that does just include a standard USB 3.1 SSD, but there is also the proprietary Seagate 1TB expansion card that has an RRP of $220. Now, that is a good bit more pricey. However, that is the Xbox Velocity architecture compatible thing, so you'll need one of those if you're going to be installing next-gen games to it, because the next-gen games basically want all of the proprietary stuff there, because that is what helps get you the incredibly fast loading times that, well, just about all of the new consoles will be able to achieve. Now, in terms of performance targets, well, the Series X does have a bit more raw performance than anything else. It targets 4K 60 FPS or 1440p 120 FPS. Now that will cost you $500 and it's out November 10th. Now if we look at the Xbox Series S, it's the little brother. There's no disk drive, it's all digital, which does have some cons, to be honest with you. Now, it also has a smaller form factor than the Series X, which is quite nice, and more modest performance, targeting 1440p 60 FPS, and along with that, you do have a more affordable price tag of $300, and it's also out on the 10th of November. Now, the thing is, there's not a huge amount of onboard storage. It has a 500 gig SSD, but only 364 gigabytes of that are going to be usable for games. Now, Xbox are saying that there will be smaller install sizes, but we have seen some numbers that, yes, do indicate smaller install sizes, but still a situation where you won't be able to install that many AAA games on the console. So that means that it's going to require more storage. Now, that could be you just getting a, USB 3.1 SSD for a bit less money, but if you want the optimum experience, you will want something that supports the Xbox Velocity architecture. That's what you'll need for those next-gen loading times, and that is going to cost you a good bit more money, okay? It's that Seagate proprietary card. So it's an entry-level option for dabbling in the next gen, rather than diving straight in. But even now, though, there's not absolute graphical parity. Most people try to argue that this truly was next-gen in every way, but at a lower resolution, and that everything else would essentially be and feel the same. Well, Devil May Cry 5 Enhanced isn't going to have ray tracing on the Series X, but it will have ray tracing with a future patch on the Series X, and that does, at the outset, make us a little bit worried that full feature parity will not be maintained between these machines in the long run. Now, of course, for actually getting these, there is a new thing, a bit of an ace in the hole, really, I'd say, for Microsoft, and that is Xbox All Access. It's basically like a phone monthly payment plan, but it also comes with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, of course, then the console, and it's paid over a 2-year commitment. Now, that's $24.99 US a month for the Series S and $34.99 a month for the Series X. But here's the thing, unlike your phone plan, you actually pay less money in the long run by going for the payment plan, because of course you also are including the price of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So if you were to get Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for 2 years and buy the console at full RRP, it would be more expensive than it would be just to get the plan. Now, this scheme is available in 12 countries. To be honest with you, we'd actually recommend it. It does seem like a shockingly good deal, so do check your eligibility there. Okay, games, what are they like in Team Xbox? Well, they're not great from the outset, to be honest with you. The Xbox launch slate really does rely on big hitter multi-platform titles like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legion, Dirt 5, Tetris Effect Connected, and Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. Then, of course, also like Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. But Game Pass and backwards compatibility is going to mean that a huge chunk of the Xbox library will be along for the ride on day one, and those things will look and play better. And that basically is the thing. If you already like playing video games and you want to play them at a higher resolution and a better frame rate, then this is a pretty good situation for you. I mean, speaking as a PC gamer, many of us would regularly, well, maybe every few years, make updates to our machines that cost about the same as an Xbox Series S or X, and we wouldn't do that to play new games. We would do that purely to get a better frame rate and better graphics. So along those lines, this can also, well, be a pretty sensible purchase. Okay. Next up, let's talk about Sony's offerings, where it is more straightforward. There's the standard PS5 with a disc drive, and then there's the digital-only one that doesn't have a disc drive. Now, this also does mean the digital-only one is a little bit cheaper and also is slightly smaller. The performance, though, is identical between these two different versions of the PS5, which is very different to the X and S situation, where the X is far more powerful than the Series X. Now, between the X and the PS5, they basically are on par. There are some slight differences in configuration, like with SSD speed, CPU and GPU clocks and things like that, but essentially they're going to be performing roughly the same. Now, what does differentiate the PS5 in terms of new hardware is the new DualSense controller. It has adaptive triggers and haptics that apparently are transformative, and early reviews are actually saying that the games that support this controller feel next-gen. And now this may seem very surprising to you if you're not used to things with haptics and you just think that haptics are like Rumble. But from experiencing some of the really good haptics available in VR, I absolutely can say haptics can be transformative, and the DualShock, I mean, personally, I've always preferred the Xbox controller layout, but the new DualShock controller does seem to be the more innovative one with the best feature set. Now, in terms of storage, this is where things are a little bit less good for Sony, where they have 660 gigabytes of usable storage on the PS5s, but, and this is pretty cool, it has an additional M.2 slot that you can throw an extra SSD into. Now that will be an M.2 SSD in terms of the form factor, so that's something that the PC gamers out there will of course be a lot more used to. Now, you will need to make sure that it's an M.2 SSD that is on Sony's list of supported models. I would imagine then it would be an M.2 NVMe one that is a lot faster. So these will be like $200 plus for the 1TB models to begin with, but we can expect there to be a drop in price with competition there. That is, of course, as compared to Xbox's proprietary solution. Now, that said, there should be competition to the Xbox Seagate one, but at least at the outset, yeah, there is less competition in the market for the expandable top-end storage on Team Microsoft. Okay, so then if you don't need a disk drive, you can get that digital edition. Now, doing that will save you $100 up front, but on the long run, you may actually lose out. So the PS5 costs $499. The digital edition costs $399. Here's the thing though, like you'll have to get more storage. Now, you'll probably have to get storage faster for the all-digital one. That storage will probably take you above the price of the base PS5. But that said, you'll probably end up after a few years wanting base PS5 storage anyway. But that said, it will be probably cheaper by the time you'd need it. But there is another thing. Discs open you up to more markets. There are more physical retailers competing with each other. There's also parts of the second-hand market. And that does mean that I think you will have a cheaper lifetime cost of ownership going with the console that lets you use physical discs. A lot of people do prefer digital. I prefer digital for the convenience, but if you're a bit more value oriented and you want to be able to get physical games on a sale or pre-ordered copies, then yes, I think you should fork out the extra $100 because I think you will save money in the long run because you'll have access to more storefront competition instead of just being limited to to the PS Store, which of course does have its sales, but it's the sales whenever they want to do it and there's not as much competition. Let's talk about games and release dates. So both of these release on the 12th of November or 19th of November, depending on your region. And in terms of games, well, there are more exclusives here. So there's Astro's Playroom. This is already being hailed, actually, as the best bundled-in title since Wii Sports. That's kind of surprising to me. It looks interesting, but a bit gimmicky. Certainly, though, it does show off the new controller, so I think a lot of people will be enjoying that as soon as they crack open the console. There then is Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered to play. There's Godfall, there's Demon's Souls Remastered, which is pretty exciting. It's a Souls-like experience that most people haven't played. And plus, all of the multi-platform stuff that Xbox is getting, so that's Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Dirt 5, Fortnite, etc., etc., etc. But another thing is the PS5 still does have very strong backwards compatibility. There are 4,000 plus PS4 games that are going to be playable on the PS5. And then there's the new PS Plus collection, and this brings you a curated selection of PS4 hits to the PS5, and those games will have increased loading speeds and improved / more stable frame rates. There's a lot of, it's a pretty incredible selection of games for the price, to be honest with you. Bloodborne is one that's included, and that does mean that many of us are hoping for a Bloodborne that has good frame timings and 60 FPS, but we'll have to wait and see because it's not confirmed. Of course then, while they don't have as good a competitor to Game Pass, really at all anywhere as good, they do have PS Now that is available. It's sort of like a very small version of Game Pass, you could say. There is the streaming element there, but it generally is less developed than Microsoft's approach to those things, even though, of course, Microsoft's streaming solution is right now on Android, will be coming to PC soon, and then will be coming to consoles after that. Basically, whether you want to go with the Series X or the PS5 kind of just depends on what you actually want from a console. The PS4 has the better exclusive. Sony has invested a lot in that. Microsoft has as well, though, with the acquisition of Bethesda, but it will be a few more years before Microsoft's right now larger library of first-party studios is actually able to, well, bring their might to bear on the exclusives library. The PS4, of course, did build its dominance with exclusives, and very much it's a situation where Sony want to continue that strategy with the PS5. And what that means is Spider-Man, Ratchet, Horizon Forbidden West, Demon's Souls, and likely many more. Of course, there's going to be a new God of War as well. Now, some exclusives will be out on the PS4 and the PS5, but soon enough, we do think the PS5 will take over. Now, the Xbox Series X will have next-gen exclusives in the future, but not really right now, because even Halo Infinite has been delayed. And that means that its appeal does come from the unique thing you can get on that you cannot get on the PlayStation, and that is Xbox Game Pass. And I think generally a little bit more solid backwards compatibility, but right now, they're both going to be good multi-platform title boxes. Sony will have more exclusives, and that does mean that for Microsoft, it's just the fact they've got a $300 option in the Series S, which is going to be very competitive, and that on the Series X, while they don't have the exclusives, you can get a humongous library of games with Game Pass. So basically, it's more affordable, accessible gaming than what you're going to be getting over on Sony. But of course, Sony just has those exclusives, and it's hard to get around that. But that said, in terms of exclusives, in the long run, Microsoft exclusives will be, on release day, they will be on Game Pass. And that does mean that those exclusives, if you're going to be on Game Pass anyway, and that will include the Bethesda library, well, it does mean that that will be a pretty good value option. Now that said, there is one more player here. Of course, it's Nintendo. The Switch is still doing its thing, and analysts actually predict that the Switch could still be this holiday's largest selling bit of gaming kit. And that means you can probably nab yourself a deal, especially around Black Friday. But that said, I really do have to warn you here. The Switch is 4 years old in March, and it really is an underpowered machine. You know, mobile phones generally do clobber it, at least in the upper, mid, and high range. Certainly the Apple stuff does. And that's why there have been so many rumors. I mean, that's why it makes sense for there to be a Switch Pro, but there also has been many rumors about a Switch Pro coming out in 2021. I personally do think the Switch Pro is coming. So you can get a Switch if you want. It is a cheaper console, fair enough, but do bear in mind that right now the rumor mill is saying that there's a high chance there will be an updated Switch Pro with better performance in the decently near future. Okay, PC. Speaking of future-proofing, let's talk about that. Because aside from the console generations, PC is going to continue to be the best way to play games. And I really do say that. Customizability means that PC can just iterate over consoles, well, in a way that consoles can't, and you can still get a full console experience on PC. I have my regular PC rig, and then I run a HDMI cable down to my regular TV. I have a Bluetooth controller and, the Xbox Elite controller, which works on my PC, and I can play games with a controller on the couch just brilliantly. In fact, to the stage where it will outperform current consoles. But of course, the thing is, will I outperform an Xbox Series X? Maybe, maybe not. But after a few years and a few more graphics card generations, and we'll cover those very soon, yeah, PC absolutely will be back to clobbering consoles in terms of the raw performance that is available. Also on PC, there is marketplace competition, and that does mean more competitive pricing on, well, PC parts and also on games. Now, there then is still exclusives, where PC will miss out on a whole bunch of big AAA console exclusives, right? But also, PC has got so many effective exclusives in the form of indies that just don't make it out of PC. So there is a lot of just unique experiences to have on the PC. And then, of course, also, I would say virtual reality. It doesn't seem like PSVR is going to be up and running in the PS5 anytime soon. There's been not particularly great news on that front. Microsoft, of course, don't have a solution for their console, so if you're all interested in VR, then I suppose maybe an Oculus Quest 2 with the link cable over to a PC is a pretty good option if you don't want to fork it out for the Valve Index or something like that. But certainly, VR is a unique selling point of PC in terms of what you can do there in the general support. Now that said, yeah, the console, like the exclusives that most people actually care about, yeah, they're totally something on the consoles. But that has been getting better, right? Because all of the Microsoft exclusives are coming to PC, and they're also even coming to Steam, right? The new Halo will be on Steam. And Sony are warming up to the idea too. Death Stranding, Horizon Zero Dawn, Detroit Become Human, all PlayStation exclusives that made it to PC. Plus, of course, some big PS5 console exclusives making it to PC as well. Godfall coming to PC, and in the future, Square Enix's Project Athia and Final Fantasy XVI will make it to PC as well. So, basically, right, Xbox as a platform extends to PC, so PC can do everything that an Xbox thing can, and that kind of does mean that the patrician move, if you really do have the dollar, is totally just to get a PS5 and then a PC for the next gen. That's the absolute ultra premium gaming experience that is out there. Of course, for more value, I would say if you still want really good performance and some value, the Xbox Series X, probably on the payment plan, makes a lot of sense, as does the Series S as the absolute value option if you really can't spread anymore. But I do think there are significant downsides of the S in terms of its long-term viability and also just having to fork out money in storage anyway. Now, on the hardware front, for PC, we do have a lot of innovation in the market and a lot to be excited about. So there's NVIDIA's RTX 3000 series of graphics cards. There's 3 separate cards so far. There's the RTX 3080, the more modest 3070, and the rather ferocious 3090. Now, the 3070 has only 8 gigs of VRAM. Now, what's interesting there is that means it is absolutely not a 4K card. I mean, even Godfall, I believe there was some talk that Godfall actually will have VRAM issues that will limit performance on the 3070. But that said, it is $500 and it can exceed last year's $1,200 2080 Ti. So it basically is the king of 1440p at 100 plus FPS. Now, the 3080 has got 16 gigs of RAM, so it is their flagship gaming card for 4K 60 or 1440p 144Hz gaming, and it costs $700. Now, that said, there is the Herculean piece of kit, the 3090 with 24 gigabytes of VRAM, which for the gamers means 4K 60, maybe 4K 120 if you can do that. NVIDIA are saying it's capable of 8K 60, which, I mean, barely matters because I don't think it's going to be that supported really. And I suppose if you're in there for some data science stuff, maybe you're interested in this as well. But on the whole, it's a very beastly card, but it does cost $1,500. And of course, for all of these cards, availability is extremely limited. It even seems like their board partners for the non-Founders Edition cards also just had issues getting them out to market fast enough. So there's a lot of issues there. But still, the 3070 and 3080 are pretty attractive options. But there is competition, and this is competition we did not expect. So, AMD's RX 6000 series cards are intended to meet the Nvidia challenge head on, and they might actually do it. And that is pretty surprising given AMD's history of lagging behind a bit on GPUs. So their reveal happened on October 28th, but we haven't actually seen them like in the wild, so the performance reports do come from AMD and they have to be taken with a grain of salt. So in that event, Lisa Su did what she's used to doing now, just coming out, absolutely showing her fangs and showing off some incredible performance. The Radeon RX 6800 is out November 18th for $580. Now, apparently it exceeds the 2080 Ti and the 3070 across 4K and 1440p, and it has 16 gigs of VRAM, which is a bit more future-proofed than the 3070's 8 gigs. So it's basically their sort of upper mid-range card, and it can hold its own, supposedly, at 4K 60, even though it is seemingly a little bit more expensive than the 3070. We then, though, have the RX 6800 XT. This comes out on November 18th for $650. Now, this is their 4K 60 sort of flagship card, and according to AMD, it can match the 3080's performance, but at lower power draw and for $50 less. That's pretty impressive. Then we've got their real finisher, and that is the RX 6900 XT, which comes out December 8th at only $1,000. So it's obviously a lot of money, but in context, it is a bit of a deal, it seems, because it is the direct competitor to the 3090 from Nvidia. Now, that is despite it being a $500 cheaper card, a smaller card, and one that uses a lot less power, and still is hitting about the same performance. So even if this is not accessible to the vast majority of consumers, it does show what AMD can actually do when they try to flex. Now, the other thing here is that AMD's RDNA 2 architecture, which is what is displayed in these cards, is also what's powering the Xbox Series X and the PS5. So I do have to wonder then if AMD might actually do pretty well on multi-platform games, because graphically they'll all be running on the same architecture of graphics chips. Still though, all of these cards pretty much future-proof you, I would say, so you can get any of these cards now, and I think you will be pretty damn happy when it comes to playing video games for a long-ass time. Of course, once all of them are out in the wild and real-world benchmarks can be compared, take your pick, but they all seem like good options thus far. Now, there are some other things, right? NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0 is ready right now, and it can make 1440p look as good, if not better than 4K, and also run faster. That sounds like magic, but there you go. You throw AI at the problem, you iterate it a few times, and it's just that damn good. Now, AMD do have a competitor to that, but it's just not really out yet, and it won't be as developed. And AMD generally are seen as being a little bit lagging behind Nvidia on the software front, even though it may seem right now like AMD are a bit ahead on hardware. But still, I mean, just looking at everything that's happened, especially with the CPUs as well, pairing a mid-range Zen 3 CPU with basically any of Nvidia or AMD's new cards will result in a next-gen ready gaming experience for a surprisingly reasonable price, especially I'd say if you're combining a Zen 3 CPU with one of AMD's new cards, because there's some VRAM sharing that they can do, which is a pretty innovative feature and a good way to use AMD's, well, position in both of those markets. It will be significantly more expensive than the consoles to do this stuff in PC, but PC gaming is entirely its own beast, and once you are set up, your cost of ownership can go a lot down, because PC games are generally cheaper and really do benefit from there being more competition from the various different first and third party retailers. Next up, let's do the games, and there are quite a few coming out between now and the holidays. We'll focus on a few in particular. There's a good few heavy hitters coming out in and around the next-gen console release date. So between November 10th and November 13th, we've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Destiny 2 Beyond Light, Spider-Man Miles Morales, we've got Demon's Souls, we've got Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and then later on, we've got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity on the Switch, there's Cyberpunk 2077 on December 10th after its delay, there's The Medium, there's Immortals Phoenix Rising, and then beyond that, we've got a host of titles in 2021. Things like Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake, Hitman 3, Halo Infinite, Little Nightmares 2, Nier Replicant, No More Heroes 3, Resident Evil Village, and a bunch more. We, in fact, have a video on the post-launch state of next gen coming soon, so do look out for that. But that said, there are things to be wary of when it comes to the video games as well. So there's going to be a lot of marketing and things coming our way in the next few weeks. I would say there'll be a lot of style and fun, but always think about the substance there. So watch out. A lot of companies will be throwing a lot of money into trying to sway your opinion. Now, one thing we should talk about is upgrades. So there are free next-gen upgrades in some cases. Microsoft's Smart Delivery does do that, as does EA's Dual Entitlement. However, that's not supported across all games. There then are paid upgrades. Like, as an example, there are cross-generation editions. NBA 2K21 has got a $100 cross-gen edition. That's not great as compared to what some of the competition are doing. There's then also paid digital upgrades. Sony are actually doing that. It's a bit weird. Where Spider-Man Remastered is only available in the special edition of Spider-Man Miles Morales. But you can pay an extra $20 to upgrade from the standard version of Miles Morales to the special edition. So there's things like that to watch out for. The upgrades are just a weird situation. In theory, it is helpful for everyone, but it's just kind of unfortunate that not everyone has actually adopted the same approach. Xbox's Smart Delivery is the most consumer-friendly out there, but it's only definitely applicable to their first-party titles. That's good, but Microsoft have made such a big deal out of it being a great feature that it's kind of expected elsewhere from a lot of people, even though it's not actually out there everywhere else. But still, this is the sort of thing that ultimately is at the publisher's discretion, and that's why it's a bit messy. So basically there, do your own research for the games that you're interested in. Most games outside of the sports titles are playing nice though, so there is that. Okay, day one purchases. Well, that's something I wanted to talk about because, look, launch day scarcity really doesn't last. The PS5 and the Series X are not limited run items. We'll be swimming in the things after a couple of months. But they are hotly contested items, so watch out. There's going to be a lot of scalpers. Scalpers and bots ruined Nvidia's card launches. I imagine they'll target AMD as well, and they certainly did target the pre-orders for the new consoles as well. So just watch out there and don't pay over the odds. Also, I'd say good things take time. So even if you don't get these consoles on day one, remember, it took the last console generation a decent while to actually find its feet. This one will be no different. The thing is that the cross-gen approach that's been taken here means that a lot of urgency is just gone from upgrading, right? Like, a lot of these new games will be, compatible on, say, a PS4 or an Xbox One. It's very much the case of that for the Xbox side anyway, because Microsoft have said they intend to support the entire Xbox family of consoles for the foreseeable future. Now, that means if you're still using, I'd say an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro, you're probably fine to just wait for a while. Now, that said, the regular base PS4 and the Xbox One are certainly showing their age. If you were with one of those, personally, I would recommend trying to upgrade if you can. But that said, right, here's the thing. Playing the exact same games, so not even new exciting games to get, but playing the exact same games, but at 60 FPS and looking good, in PC land, that's enough to upgrade your hardware, and I think it will be in terms of the experience for console gamers as well. So yeah, getting in the new consoles I think will be good for a lot of people's experience. So many people have been stuck on 30 FPS, bad loading times, subpar gaming experiences basically, and it does seem like all the next-gen consoles are basically aiming to rectify that. So in summary, this is a pretty long video, but we wanted to present you basically all the information that we know now that we're in the days running up to these new consoles being available, and of course a whole bunch of new PC hardware and games as well. We're all going to be bombarded with snazzy trailers, PR buzzwords, and all of that stuff, but hopefully today's video has given you what you need to know and a few of the things that you need to be wary about. For me, the most funny one, because it's so avoidable it seems to me, is the storage one. I do have to wonder if there are just plans, at least on Microsoft's side, to just make some money off the lack of storage. Come on, 380 odd gigs on a console in current day. Man, I get it. The new Call of Duty Black Ops install will be a bit smaller in the Series S, but not enough to make 380 gigs okay. So man, some of that stuff is a bit rough. But anyway, I'd like to know, after you've watched this video, Where are you leaning? Are you a PC, PS5 patrician? Are you going to be flashing the dollar and getting all of that? Or, if you're choosing one, what are you going to be choosing? Are you upgrading your graphics cards? Do let us know. So yeah, I really want to see just what the thoughts are. It is a pretty incredible time for gaming, honestly. It actually seems like of all the things you could buy, just about none of them are a terrible deal. I am suspicious of the digital-only console's lifetime cost of ownership and the limited storage capacity of the Series S, but in terms of bang for your buck, like video games per unit money spent, we're in a pretty damn good position. As much as so much of 2020 has sucked, it at least seems for gaming that while the delays may have sucked, the sort of base health of the games industry and the hardware that we've got access to is really incredible. Best ever. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Let me know what you think. If you want to support us and get, well, the 2020 edition of our pin, there'll be an other pin as well. And of course, the art pack with the sticker and Patreon, you can do that. You get cool shit in the mail and it supports us. Pretty great situation. That's it for me. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.